Don't tell me why you can't do something. Tell me how you can. We're going to talk about mindset in this new episode of Horrible Writing.
That will never work. You can't push that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing to do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to spell? Stop. Be happy. Quit while you're Don't bother. I've seen better. Do you really want to? And my third grade. Get up.
Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Welcome to episode 76 of Horrible Writing. I am your host, Paul Sading, and I hope this finds you better than it finds me. We are at the end of February, and if you listen to each and every episode of the show, you will know that in November, I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing intramural volleyball. Well, I'm a bad habit, stubborn type of dude who always pushes himself, and my wife made it very clear in no uncertain terms that I was to not do that this time around because I miss ski season, can't travel that easily, and pretty much I'm just a pain in the butt because I'm a big baby when I'm hurt. And I swore I would. So I did. I actually did really well. And I behaved. And the other night, walking the dogs up a hill on the sidewalk, stubbed my left foot, and in the process of tripping, re-ruptured that right Achilles tendon. So I'm down again. This could be a very bad time for me because of being a teleworker. I'm constantly home and away from people. And anybody who's smart enough to understand at least a layman's level of evolution knows that we are evolutionary creatures. We need to interact with each other, even if we don't like each other. So it's difficult enough to have that interaction that's necessary to maintain a healthy mindset. Add to it the fact that from November to January, I couldn't drive myself anywhere. I was home a lot more than normal because I could only go out whenever my wife could take me somewhere. Or my kid was home from school and she could actually chauffeur me around, which was, neat little twist of fates there. So to know that at the end of February, so right around a month of freedom, I'm now back as a prisoner in the house, depending on other people, and more importantly, not getting that interaction that's so important for our healthy mindsets. So I could dwell on that. I could bemoan that. I could let depression kick my ass, which it has in the past, and that could affect my writing. That's big life stuff. People go through health issues, cancer, the loss of a loved one, God forbid, serious things, lifelong things. I'll recover, I hope. I will recover. But somebody dealing with hypothyroidism or diabetes or, something as terrible as cancer, they don't necessarily get that luxury that I have. And how they look at the world shapes their world. It knows no boundaries. Doesn't matter the profession or any of the demographics. Writers are included in that, but we also add another layer to it ourselves. In terms of our writing, we tell ourselves quite often why we can't achieve something, why we can't become a bestseller, why we can't write 20 books, why we can't write a single book, why we can't finish that chapter, why we can't find time to write. There's all kinds of reasons that people give themselves, that they convince themselves of. Some of them get really ugly. That self-deprecating stuff. We're really, really creatives. We're really good at reminding ourselves how much we suck. And whenever the world validates that through an Amazon review or For those of you in audio drama, you get that iTunes, Apple Podcast, 1 star because you're such a horrible person for killing a dog, a fictional dog in a piece of fiction. But we cling to those. That's why in this year of giving, 2019, all of my efforts this year are aimed at helping other people. So I'll be adjusting some stuff as we go. I'll talk about that later. But we are our own worst enemies more often than not, far more often than not. So I think it's imperative that we talk about that. How we look at the world, how we look at ourselves, affects us and our writing, our ability to write. If we look at other writers with envy because they're able to produce so much, that they're achieving those things that we want to achieve ourselves, at some point, we have to stop the blame game. We have to stop giving ourselves excuses, blaming fabricated or actual injustices in our world that don't allow us to achieve the thing that they're achieving. And we have to look in the mirror. Now, some of you are never going to do that. You're never going to have the emotional intelligence, and this is not a slight on anybody, but these are things that we have to deliberately work toward and work to improve. We have to. It doesn't just happen. Just like critical thinking doesn't just happen. You have to actually work at it. And there are people hearing this message right now who believe they deserve a certain thing, but they're not willing to do the hard work to get there. We have to look ourselves in the mirror. We have to own up to the own reality that we could find time. I don't care how busy you are. I don't. You will never, ever, ever convince me that you're so busy that you can't write. By trying to, you will only convince me that you're not willing to make the sacrifices to write. We all have the same amount of time in a day. All of us. Sun comes up and goes down at the same rate for all of us. Yet, some people are able to make those sacrifices because they choose to. And some people aren't willing to. And that's really honestly what it comes down to. No, I don't care. It's 2019. There are too many things available to you to allow you to write. On your commute, even if you're the driver, you can dictate. I can't dictate. Yes, you can. You can learn tips, tools, tactics, and you can practice and you can get better. 10,000 hours, right? 10,000 hours to master something. Doesn't mean you have to master dictation to be able to do it. So what people do instead is, instead of facing the guilt, instead of facing the reality that they're really not investing in themselves to the level that's required to achieve the writing goals that they have, they rationalize. And one of the ways we rationalize is by negative self-talk. In 2011, Thomas Strobe from the University of Munster, and Go Okada for Hiroshima University both concluded in a study that they did that exposure to negative words, even through listening to other people or validating them or saying them ourselves and echoing those sentiments, actually impairs our ability to do productive work. Using negative words like I can't because, right? Can't is a negative word. Now here's another interesting little tidbit. From Stanford University, Robert Sapolsky showed that negative influences, people around us, our tribe, the things we say, can actually shrink the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that is required to solve problems and to drive our initiatives. that willingness, that desire to get something done. When we speak negatively, when we think negatively, it harms our productivity and our desire to be productive. Psychology Today, I actually talked about something as well, how about negative mood disturbs our interaction with our environment, our world. It affects our ability to perceive, remember, and reinforce neural connections. And while being happy improves our ability to be more cognitively alert and productive. We are creatures of habit. We see the things that we focus on. And the more we do that, the stronger that almost inherent ability becomes. That's good and bad. If you are a healthy, positive, productive thinker, you're going to see more of that in the world. It will draw you. You will think more positively about yourself, about the world, about people in your world, etc. And that will drive your behaviors. It'll drive your happiness, your productivity. Whereas on the flip side, if you think those negative things, over time, the more you do it, the easier it is to identify those things in all aspects of your life. Life is about happenstance and chance. Okay, there is nothing designed. There's no plot for your life. Things are going to occur at this time and that time. Things just happen. But as pattern seekers, we look for things that validate a sometimes even subconscious thought or belief that we have, including negative things. You could have an entire week of decent work, nothing spectacular, nothing great, no promotion, nothing along those lines. But on Thursday afternoon, one of your coworkers is just a doo-doo head and really pisses you off and maybe even gets you in a little bit of hot water over something that you had to defend yourself on unfairly. You will ignore all the halfway decent things that happened all week long with no drama, no trauma, nothing bad. Your brain will glance over those as if they didn't happen, and you will spend your weekend pounding a beer, playing angry video games, and thinking about that dickhead who pissed you off on Thursday. Because that's what we do. It takes effort to change that pattern of thought, to change those antecedents that lead us to thinking negatively or positively. And why, again, I need to intersperse this throughout this episode, that is so important is because that drives our mental state. It drives our perception of the world, which impacts, like I've said, our ability to be happy, productive, to be innovators, take initiative, to get things done, like that book you need to work on. When you're happy, your body decreases cortisol and produces serotonin, which creates a sense of well-being, of healthy well-being. It helps your brain physically function at a higher capacity, at its maximum. Happy thoughts, positive thinking, supports brain growth, especially in your prefrontal cortex. And that's a part of the brain that controls your emotions and your behaviors and helps you focus on goals. This isn't just Paul trying to urge you to do better for yourself in your writing. This is a lifestyle. This is something you can choose to do. You're not helpless. Again, saying I'm helpless to change this is negative self-talk. It's negative thinking. Self-fulfilling prophecy even. Sometimes you have to force yourself to do these things. I even told those people over at the Horrible Writer Writing Support Group on Facebook, which has exploded, by the way, over the past 2 weeks. Welcome to all our new members. That the morning after I woke up after rupturing the Achilles for the second time was a dark morning. Feeling sorry for myself. Oh, woe is me. This isn't fair. Summer's coming. I had conferences I wanted to go to, camping trips I want to do, and now I'm back on crutches, on a knee scooter, and there's going to be a lot of things I can't do. I could dwell on that all day. But because I have structure and I have discipline, I made sure that when my alarm clock went off at 4:40, I swung carefully the booted foot out of the bed. I got on my crutches and I took my ass downstairs and got to writing. I was later than normal, obviously, but I had to force myself to. I had to force myself to recognize how sorry for myself I was feeling. And I had to make a decision. Do I stay with that and mope and whine and not get anything done and just dwell on that? Or do I get back to doing what I needed to do, which was to work on The Scales, my new horror novel? It's not easy. I'm not some paragon of disciplined excellence and positive thinking. I'm not. I'm very cynical and skeptical. And that's where all of this comes from. It comes from my empathy. I do feel for people. I do empathize with people. But I also know people. I know our nature and the way we do things. And we rationalize a lot. And one place where you'll never get that allowance is here on this show. Empowerment through candor. If I start giving you allowances for rationalizing, then I'm not being candid. I'm not being honest with you. It's one of the worst things that we as writers can do for ourselves. It makes us feel comfortable. If we don't achieve something in life, well, we've got all of these reasons why. Why we couldn't, i.e. can't, do it. Because it's scary and it's hard to actually sacrifice and work hard for something, and maybe the fear of never achieving that thing becomes daunting. It becomes, we assign unrealistic expectations to it, which is a danger, obviously, of positive thinking. You become unrealistic in your expectations, think you can accomplish everything, and when you don't, then you fall on your face. Amy Morin, licensed clinical social worker and author of 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do, talked about that. It doesn't mean thinking positively doesn't mean it's going to change everything overnight. You still have to do the hard work. You still have to get out of bed at 4:40 in the morning to get to your writing, even when you don't want to. And here's a flag from my personal journey, my personal story that may help you. Being hypersensitive to those moments when you don't want to do something is the very moment you need to do that thing. If you give in, you start down the wrong path. This episode of Horrible Writing is brought to you by Novel Idea to Podcast, how to sell more books through podcasting. Are you not selling what you expected to or what you hoped to? Are you tired of handing over money to Facebook and Instagram and Amazon for all those ads that seem to get a lot of clicks but no actual conversions? There is a way to drive sales without throwing money at ads and hoping they stick. And in Novel Idea to Podcast, I share how every single one of you can build a following, build a tribe, and convert to book sales. Check it out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, wherever you get your digital books today. I don't do this episode to beat anybody over the head. I don't do this to get a whole bunch of sympathy emails and messages from folks about what I'm going through. I do this because I want to empower everybody. And I know at this point, 76 episodes into this show, my audience doesn't come here for bullshit. My audience comes here for the real deal. I have real conversations with other writers, and when I do these standalone episodes, all of this is real as well. It will always be. And the day I stop being real is the day I stop this podcast. Focus on how you think. Metacognition. Thinking about how we think. One of the most influential books I ever read in my personal life, my personal journey, was called The Believing Brain by Michael Shermer. And it really helped me see how negatively centric I was in my thinking. And since that journey 3 or 4 years ago now, I've done a lot of work to undo 30 years of negative thinking. This is not easy. Start now because it's never too late and it's never too early to start. The earlier you start, the better you'll start. You'll get, again, you reinforce what you already do. Force yourself to see something positive in your life every single day. Force yourself to recognize when you're thinking negatively. Force yourself to watch what happens. What are those consequences? What are your behaviors after that thought? Going back to my example about how you don't want to get up at 4:40 in the morning because you just ruptured your Achilles for the second time and you're busy pouting. That's when you need to be sensitive to it, recognize what you're thinking, and get your ass out of bed and go do what you need to do. As always, this show is aimed to empower and to motivate people, but by being real, lifting all boats. This is not to beat anybody down. Some of you don't have goals and ambitions of being published or publishing any work, whether you're an author, a poet, an audio dramatist. You just do this for the love of writing. That's fine. But there's still things that you can take away from this. It doesn't have to be writing centric. Even if you're just a hobbyist and you just listen to the show, hey, I love having you here. But this can apply to other things in your life, your family, your other passion. Maybe it's teaching a dance class or teaching Taekwondo to kids, whatever it may be. This is applicable across our lives. But this is a writing podcast, so this is why we talk about it in that frame. But don't lose sight of that either. You are epic. But you need to remember that. Be kind to yourself. Don't lose sight of that. Never lose sight of that. If you're a patron, hang around for a little bit because I'm actually going to start adding further talks in these standalone episodes for patrons. Give patrons a little something extra every single episode, not just in those writing interview episodes. If you're not a patron, consider being one. As low as $1 a month, you'll get early access to all podcasts, including Crown of Thieves, which is a new podcast I'll have coming out in the spring of 2019, which is a medieval high fantasy audio drama. And I'm going to start working on the books as soon as I get my next 2 books ready to go. This is what happens when you become productive. The supply chain or the productivity chain gets extended. So you'll have access to that. There are other things going on like exclusive stories and an exclusive audio drama called You, which is a choose your own adventure drama, because it doesn't even really have a genre right now because my patrons actually get to decide the next decision point in each one of the episodes. So each episode ends with a question for them to answer, and depending on their answers is where I go with the story. So I can't even describe where it's going right now because after episode 12, it kind of took a more fantastical twist. So we'll see. It's all up to the patrons. But even that is available at the $3 level per month, not per episode or whatever, per $3 a month. That's less than a Starbucks cup of coffee for all kinds of podcasts, fiction, access, insight over there at patreon.com/Paul Sading. All one word, of course, in that URL. So come join us. If you are enjoying the show, leave a rating and review. Please, we've got great ratings and reviews, but we just don't have enough of them. I mean, the show is doing great in Apple Podcasts as far as average review. It's all 5-star, but there's only 12 ratings. There's 76 episodes. There's a lot of you not leaving them. But I do want to thank a number of people that I've never thanked before, and that's my fault. And it's not right. I should have fixed this a long time ago. Cathguire gave it 5-star. Positive encouragement. This review goes all the way back to November 17 when I did. an interview with Sarah Werner, and she loved that. T.H. Walk, 5-star, informative. I was called a genius. Chris Grunland, you may remember him. He's a literary author who I interviewed about dyslexia back in episode, I think, 36, so a long time ago. And he said it's anything but horrible. Gave it a 5-star. MK Chester, 5-star. Yes, you remember MK. We did a discussion about episode 40-something. That one's also old, but about the lifestyle and dealing with some physical limitations and still being a productive writer. Rick Coast, 5-star for all writers. You remember Rick Coast, like episode 20, one of the first ones, talking about writing as therapy. How fitness, 5-star, just what writers need. And then the latest one is No Names Left, 47. 5-star, talking about a great show. If you're writing your first work of fiction or your 10th, you'll find something useful. These are the kind of things that help people find the show and give the show a chance, which means it helps our horrible writing community grow here on Twitter and in that Facebook page. And if you're not over there, again, I want to drop this little hint for you. Or not this hint, but this piece of encouragement. That community does a monthly writing challenge, 500-word story or word count limit on the story. And it's not a contest. We just do a challenge. And we're getting great responses. And some of those stories, we can't do everyone, but some of the stories that are posted each challenge, so each month, are being chosen for our new podcast called The Stories We Tell, which is only open to members of the Horrible Writing Writers community from Facebook. And I know some people are like, I don't use Facebook. If you're a writer with ambitions to be published, you need to be on Facebook even if you hate it. That's just the truth of it. When you decide to do these things, you lose the privilege of deciding where you need to be to find people. You still need to be on Facebook for people to find your books. So, unless you just happen to write the next great American novel, then you can do whatever the hell you want. But until then, if you're like us, you do what you do. All right. So leave those ratings and review. Come on over to patreon.com/pulsating. Support for $1 a month, get all kinds of stuff. Support for $3 a month, get an extra audio drama. Support at $5 a month, get behind the scenes once a month podcast where you can ask me anything and we have a conversation about it. I mean, there's all kinds of good stuff happening. I'm going to head over into the Patreon exclusive in a second, but until you hear from me again, episode 77. Episode 77, I'll talk about it in that episode, but it's a great interview with Gwen Katz. We talk about LGBTQ plus representation and being a LGBTQ plus writer, even in 2019, what it means, what it can be, some of the challenges. It's an excellent interview. Gwen's an awesome, awesome person. So definitely come back for that. Until then, keep being epic.
This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse @WritingHorrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.